There comes a moment, quiet, unspectacular, yet utterly irreversible, when a man looks around at the people he once called brothers and realizes he is profoundly alone. Not physically, not necessarily emotionally, but existentially. It often doesn't come in crisis. It doesn't announce itself with betrayal or some soap opera crescendo. It slips in during the silence, when the noise has died down and you're left staring into the gap between what friendship was supposed to be and what it actually is. That moment is not the end of something. It's the beginning of truth, of clarity, of the slow unraveling of illusions men were taught to call brotherhood. Seneca, the Stoic who walked the dangerous tightrope of Roman politics while wrestling with the soul's demands, warned about this long before we wrapped friendship in bar tabs and group chats. He wrote not about having many friends, but about choosing a few rare souls whose virtue mirrored your own. Friendship, for Seneca, was not convenience. It was covenant. Not shared entertainment, but shared ethos. And that idea? It's terrifying today, because most of what passes for male friendship is forged not in shared principle, but shared avoidance. Men don't talk. Not really. They orbit around truth in long ellipses. They trade jokes and sarcasm like currency to avoid going bankrupt with vulnerability. They bond through distraction, sports, work, women, but never quite touch the sacred marrow beneath it all. And for a while it works. It's enough. But then something happens. Life cracks open. A father dies. A marriage falls apart. A dream collapses. And suddenly the old conversations feel like cardboard. You reach out not for company, but for communion, and realize no one's there. Not really. And that's when the ache starts, not because you're unloved, but because you let yourself believe proximity was intimacy. You confused access with allegiance. They showed up to your party, but they wouldn't show up to your reckoning. And that's not because they're evil. It's because they never signed up for that kind of friendship. They weren't brothers. They were co-pilots on a plane that was only ever flying in circles. And this is where many men begin to spiral. Not into anger, but into a quiet kind of shame. What's wrong with me? Why don't I have the kind of friendships I see in stories or dream about in the dark? But the problem isn't you. The problem is what you were taught friendship meant. You were told loyalty was about sticking around, not standing with. You were told trust was about time spent, not truth shared. You were told that being one of the guys mattered more than being fully known. Seneca would have called that noise distraction. He would have told you that friendship without virtue is just flattery with a longer leash. He would have asked, do the men around you call you to your higher nature or simply help you tolerate your lower one? Do they challenge your blindness or protect it? Do they lean into the uncomfortable silences with you or run from them into comfort and convenience? That moment of realization is brutal because it demands a death. The death of the myth that the people around you will naturally grow with you. Most won't. Most will resent your growth because it shines a light on their stagnation. Most will unconsciously try to pull you back, not out of hatred, but out of terror, because if you can change, then maybe they should have too, and that threatens everything they've built their identity on. So you're left with a choice. Do you keep shrinking to fit the mold your brothers love you in? Or do you begin the lonely ascent toward becoming the kind of man who could call another man a brother and mean it? That path is not easy. It is not paved with applause, but it is real. And that's what you've been aching for this whole time. Not attention, not belonging, but truth. The kind of truth that sits in silence with you and doesn't flinch. The kind of truth that speaks when it would be easier to remain quiet. The kind of truth that loves you not for who you were at your worst, but for who you're fighting to become. The world doesn't offer much of that, but you can be it. And in becoming it, you'll start to find it. Not in crowds, not in circles, but in the few, the rare.
The dangerous few who walked through their own hells and don't need you to be small so they can feel big. Who don't just celebrate your success, but witness your solitude. Who don't just toast your victories, but stand beside your crucifixions. It starts with seeing the illusion, and you've just begun.
Most men never say this out loud, but after that first realization, after the curtain is pulled back, they begin to see just how much of their life has been shaped by the fear of outgrowing others. It's a slow, bitter awakening. You remember the small betrayals, the moments your silence bought you belonging. You remember laughing at things you didn't find funny, agreeing with things you didn't believe in, dimming your ambition because someone else called it arrogance. And worst of all, you remember the way you began to do the same to others, policing the light in your friends to protect the dark in yourself. This is not friendship, this is performance. And most men are trapped in it for decades, smiling, drinking, showing up, but never really showing themselves. Seneca knew that nothing corrodes the soul faster than proximity to the wrong people. He didn't mean wrong in the moral sense. He meant those who quietly war against your becoming, those whose values are incompatible with your nature, but whose presence is convenient. He said, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. It sounds simple. It is not. Because the real cost of truth is loneliness. The first men you lose after your awakening are usually the ones who never intended to stay if you stopped playing your role. They liked you when you were agreeable. They loved you when you were broken in the same places they were. But when you started healing, when you began asking different questions, chasing different aims, they stopped recognizing you. Not because you changed, but because you became honest. And honesty is always a risk. It costs you something, sometimes everything. So men begin to grieve, not just the friendships, but the years spent living under a false flag. And grief, when not processed, curdles into cynicism. That's why so many men today sound bitter, jaded, hollow when they speak of friendship. They laugh off the idea of brotherhood as sentimental, naive. But that's a defense. Underneath it, they still long for it, deeply. They still remember what it felt like to believe someone had their back without conditions. They just stopped believing it was possible. This is where you either close off or go deeper. This is where Seneca's words become lifelines. Because he didn't just warn against false friendships, he also mapped the path to true ones. And it begins with virtue. Not shared hobbies, not personality types, but shared alignment in the soul. Shared respect for wisdom, courage, self-restraint, justice. Because when those things form the bedrock, everything else becomes bearable. Even disagreement, even conflict, even distance. But without them, you're building trust on sand. Modern men are rarely taught how to choose friends. We stumbled into them through context, school, work, location, and mistake proximity for purpose. But real brotherhood is intentional. It is forged, not found. And it doesn't happen by waving. It happens by becoming the kind of man worthy of it. That means showing up differently. It means choosing depth over banter. It means asking hard questions and not flinching at hard answers. It means letting yourself be seen even when you feel ashamed. And it means standing still when another man opens his wounds instead of trying to patch them with advice or humor. Brotherhood doesn't mean fixing each other. It means refusing to walk away when the fixing takes too long. And sometimes it also means solitude, because you will go through seasons where no one matches your depth, where no one shares your values, where silence becomes your closest friend. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're in the process of realignment. It means you're shedding the skins of old selves, old bonds, old patterns, and waiting for what's real to catch up. This is where most men break. not because they're weak, but because no one ever told them that brotherhood is the reward, not the starting point. It's what comes after you've walked alone long enough to know what you actually need. It's what emerges when you stop trying to be liked and start becoming trustworthy. It's what forms when you live with such clarity that other men can rest in your presence without wearing armor. And so we begin to understand something most cultures have forgotten, that male friendship, real friendship, is a kind of spiritual commitment, not just to each other, but to something higher than both of you, a shared standard, a vow to pursue what is difficult, what is honest, what is good, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. So the question isn't, why did my friends fail me? The question is, what kind of man must I become to attract the few who never will? Because they exist. But they do not chase, they recognize. And recognition only happens when you first learn to see yourself.
There comes a moment, quiet and unmistakable, when a man stops trying to be understood, not out of a spite, not from pride, but from a deeper knowing that most will never see him clearly because they do not yet see themselves. This is the final heartbreak of the journey, and also its beginning. You stop forcing closeness. You stop explaining your path to people who haven't even looked for theirs. And in that silence, something wild begins to grow in you, something fierce and clean. You begin to respect your own soul more than the comfort of others. And in doing so, you begin to become a man who can be counted on. Not for parties, not for entertainment, but for presence, for truth, for war, if it comes to it. Seneca would call this living in accordance with nature, not the trees, not the birds, but your nature, the man you were meant to become before the world taught you to wear disguises, the man who no longer needs an audience to feel real. It is here, in this strange and often lonely territory, that real brotherhood finally shows its face, not in crowded rooms, not in group chats, but in the rare, raw glances exchanged between men who've both suffered and come through it. Men who don't need to be told what loyalty means because they've already paid the price for it. Men who don't gossip because they understand what silence is worth. Men who don't perform because performance is for those still trying to earn love. These men are not loud, they don't show off. You'll find them doing small things with great integrity, keeping promises, apologizing without drama, defending those who are absent, sacrificing comfort for principle. You might miss them if you're still drawn to noise, but if you've suffered enough, if you've walked the desert long enough, you'll spot them like fire in the dark, and they will spot you too. But you must be ready, because these men don't bond over mediocrity, they don't tolerate passivity, and they don't flatter, they challenge. They call you out when you lied to yourself. They demand the death of your excuses. They ask you questions that make you burn with shame, and then they sit with you in the smoke until it clears. Brotherhood is not built in the soft places. It is built where everything unnecessary has been burned away, in the ashes of false friendships, in the ruins of ego, in the silence that follows your most honest cry. And yet, paradoxically, this kind of friendship is also the gentlest thing in the world. Because once you know a man has chosen you, not out of need, not out of nostalgia, but out of respect, there is nothing to prove. There is only the sacred act of showing up again and again. When life unravels, when death knocks, when everything goes dark, and your only prayer is not to face it alone. Too many men today walk through fire by themselves, not because they are strong, but because they've never seen anyone else do it together. But the truth is this: you were not made for isolation. You were not designed to carry the weight of existence alone. The modern illusion of hyper-independence is killing men faster than any enemy. You were meant to fight side by side, not just for survival, but for meaning. And that means risking again, trusting again, not naively, not blindly, but bravely, with discernment, with open eyes and a guarded heart. You will be betrayed again, but that cannot be the reason you close off. Because one day, if you keep your eyes clear and your soul clean, you will find your equals. Not your audience, not your entourage, your equals. And when you do, it will feel less like fireworks and more like a return, like something ancient coming back into alignment. You will sit in silence and know more in those minutes than in years of shallow talk. You will look into another man's eyes and know that if everything collapsed tomorrow, this one would still be standing beside you. Seneca never promised that life would give you such men. He only urged you to become one, to live in such a way that if another honest man crossed your path, he would recognize you instantly, not by your words, but by the life you've built. A life not of comfort, but of character, not of applause, but of depth. So if today you find yourself alone, take heart. You are not failing, you are forging. You are doing the brutal, sacred work of becoming the kind of man who no longer confuses company with connection. And in time, as you walk this path, others will appear. Not many, but enough. And when they do, you will not need to ask if they are real. You'll know. And you'll finally understand that brotherhood isn't something given, it's something earned. Through fire, through patience, through the kind of honesty that breaks things before it builds them. And when you stand among those few, those rare and real brothers, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Not relief, not pride, but rest.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.